NASA warns of a geostorm that could black out Earth as a debate that raises scientific, technological, and global preparedness concerns about the potential impact of extreme space weather. Geomagnetic storms, also known as geostorms, are caused by solar activity such as coronal mass ejections, CMEs, and solar flares, which release massive amounts of energy into space. When these charged particles reach Earth, they interact with the planet's magnetic field, potentially disrupting communication systems, power grids, satellites, and navigation networks. NASA and other space agencies continuously monitor solar activity to predict the likelihood and severity of geostorms that could impact Earth. In extreme cases, a powerful geostorm could overload power grids, damage transformers, and cause widespread blackouts lasting weeks or even months. A severe geomagnetic storm could also disable GPS systems, disrupt airline communications, and interfere with military and emergency response operations. Scientists warn that modern technology is highly vulnerable to space weather, as global infrastructure depends heavily on satellites and electrical grids. One of the most famous recorded geomagnetic storms, the Carrington event of 1859, caused telegraph systems to fail, setting some telegraph stations on fire. If a storm of similar magnitude occurred today, the impact would be far more devastating, given society's dependence on digital and electrical systems. The most recent significant geostorm occurred in 1989, knocking out power across the entire Canadian province of Quebec, leaving millions in darkness. NASA's latest warnings suggest that an intensifying solar cycle may increase the frequency of powerful solar flares, heightening the risk of a catastrophic event. The Sun follows an 11-year solar cycle, and during peak activity, solar storms become stronger and more frequent, increasing the potential for geostorm-related blackouts. The current solar cycle is expected to reach its peak around 2025, leading scientists to warn of increased risks to global infrastructure. Experts say that even a moderate geostorm could disrupt communication satellites, affecting everything from cell phone networks to internet services. Severe solar storms could cause satellites to malfunction or permanently damage them, leading to billions of dollars in losses for global technology industries. GPS systems, which rely on precise satellite signals, could experience severe interference, impacting aviation, shipping, and emergency navigation services. Military defense systems, which depend on satellite-based radar and early warning systems, could also be compromised, raising national security concerns. Space agencies like NASA and NOAA use solar observatories and space weather satellites to track geomagnetic activity and issue early warnings. Despite ongoing monitoring, predicting exact geostorm impact levels remains difficult, as space weather is highly unpredictable and influenced by multiple factors. Scientists argue that power grids and critical infrastructure are not adequately protected against extreme space weather events. Many electrical grids worldwide lack sufficient shielding, meaning a major geomagnetic storm could cause mass power failures lasting weeks or even months. Transformers, which are essential for distributing electricity, are particularly vulnerable to geomagnetic-induced currents, leading to costly replacements and long recovery times. The cost of reinforcing power grids against geostorms is high, but experts warn that the cost of an unprotected blackout would be far worse. Some researchers believe that global leaders should invest in solar storm defense strategies, such as hardened transformers and improved grid resilience. If a severe geostorm occurred, modern societies would face major disruptions in banking, water supply, hospitals, and emergency services. Hospitals rely on electronic medical equipment, life support systems, and data networks, all of which could be compromised in a major blackout. The financial sector depends on real-time electronic transactions, meaning stock markets, ATMs, and online banking systems could crash during a prolonged outage. Some scientists argue that society is overly reliant on fragile technology, making it more susceptible to large-scale disruptions from space weather events. Despite NASA's warnings, many governments have not yet implemented comprehensive plans to deal with long-term geostorm-induced blackouts. Some experts argue that solar storm preparedness should be treated as seriously as natural disaster preparedness, requiring backup energy systems and fail-safes. One proposed solution is the development of geomagnetic shielding technologies, which could reduce the impact of solar-induced electrical currents on power grids. NASA is currently working on better space weather forecasting models, which could provide more accurate predictions and longer warning times before a major geostorm hits. However, if a strong geostorm were to strike unexpectedly, the world could experience an unprecedented technological crisis, affecting millions globally. Governments must decide whether to prioritize investments in space weather protection or continue relying on reactive measures when a disaster occurs. Some argue that increased funding for space weather research, emergency response planning, and infrastructure upgrades is essential for global security. A global geostorm preparedness strategy could involve international cooperation between space agencies, governments, and private technology companies. Some critics argue that space weather threats are overstated, and that historical solar storms have not caused widespread, irreversible damage. However, the rapid expansion of the digital economy, artificial intelligence, and smart infrastructure means modern technology is far more vulnerable than in previous decades. The possibility of a worst-case scenario, a solar storm strong enough to disable global communication networks for months, remains a serious concern. While technological advancements have brought greater convenience and connectivity, they have also increased our exposure to risks from extreme space weather events. If NASA's warnings prove accurate, governments may need to act quickly to prevent catastrophic blackouts that could paralyze modern society. Ultimately, the debate is not just about whether a geostorm will happen, but whether global infrastructure is prepared to handle the consequences when it does. The real question is whether world leaders will invest in space weather resilience now, or wait until disaster strikes to take action.